In this video, I'll be going over the biggest surprises and the worst fails at the 2025 Classic Physique Mr. Olympia prejudging. Although the results are not finalized yet, there were clearly some competitors who stood out and made significant leaps, while there were others who clearly regressed and let us down. Starting off with one of the early disappointments of the night, at least in my opinion, we have Chen. Branch has not been a top-tier threat at the Olympia in recent times, but after his near-perfect win at the 2025 China Pro, expectations were undoubtedly higher. That performance showed us what he is capable of when he nails his peak. He had razor-sharp condition, incredible quad detail and fullness, and some of the best frontal aesthetics in the division, at least in my own opinion. Coming into the Olympia, I thought that he could replicate that peak and add even a bit more fullness, and then possibly break into the top 10. But on the big stage, that momentum kind of disappeared. While Branch was leaner and sharper than last year, he simply did not stand out in such a stacked lineup. From the front, his line still popped, his legs were phenomenal as always, and that X-frame was pure classic, but from the side and back, he was clearly outmatched. The lack of depth and overall mass hurt him in comparisons, especially next to the newer wave of athletes who combine aesthetic flow with serious density. It's not that he missed his peak to say, in fact, he was likely right on point. The issue is that even at the best level, his physique looks a bit capped. He is beautifully shaped, no doubt, but not really imposing enough to make an impact on this year's Olympia stage. For that reason, as much as I enjoy his own look and appreciate the improvements that he's made, Chen ends up being one of the biggest disappointments in my own opinion. Next up, one of the biggest surprises of the night, Mattius Managotchi. After an up-and-down season where he kind of struggled for consistency at the Tampa and Texas pros, I was not really expecting a breakout performance from him on the Olympia stage. But from the moment he hit that first front double, it was clear that this was a different version. He came in sharper, tighter, and far more balanced from the front to back than we have seen him recently. While he is still not the biggest guy in the lineup, his presentation and flow made every pose count. The transitions were clean, his posing was pretty good, and the conditioning was dialed in perfectly. You could see every line pop, which was a welcome surprise. His structure really does shine when he is this lean, and that smooth taper combined with pleasing enough insertion gave him one of the most aesthetic looks on that stage. In my opinion, this was a first call-out worthy physique, and rightfully so. Managotchi has proven that when he nails the timing, he can stand next to almost anyone. There is still room to grow, no doubt. The back and chest do need a lot more density, and overall size will determine how far he can move up, but the progress from earlier this year to now is undeniable. After taking 9th place last year, he does look like he could make it into that top 6 to top 8 conversation. For me, Mattius Managotchi is one of the true surprises of this year's Olympia, not only because he improved, but because he finally delivered on all the potential that I and many others have been waiting to see. Following that high point, we move on to one of the clear disappointments of the night. We have Horse MD Marcelo D'Angelus. Coming to the Olympia, the hype around Marcelo was undoubtedly massive. The social media buzz, the energy from Brazil, everyone expected him to bring something close to his all-time best. But once he stepped on stage, it was painfully obvious that this was not the same version that we saw earlier in the season. He came in noticeably flat and very soft, especially in the legs and glutes, which completely changed his physique for the worst-case scenario. His upper body still has that nice structure and shape. He has broader shoulders, full enough arms, and a great overall frame, I would say, but the balance was off because his lower body lacked that sharpness and density to really compete. From the front, he did look fine, but from the side and back, he faded quickly. The midsection looked wide and a bit watery, and combine that with a chest and back that still lag behind the top guys, and you have something that really hurts your overall presentation. It is very disappointing because Marcelo has so much potential. The structure is good, the charisma is definitely there, and when he's dialed in, he looks like a top 10 threat. But this version was definitely far from that. He needs to come in much drier, tighter, and with a smaller waist to really contend with the elite competitors. For someone who had a ton of eyes on him leading into this show, this was a big letdown, especially for fans back home in Brazil. Still, he carries himself with a lot of class and positivity, and you can't help but root for him to rebound stronger next year. Also, if you guys are enjoying the video so far, a like and sub would really be awesome, as it helps out my channel tremendously. Now for a pleasant and kind of expected surprise, Jose Manuel. Josema came out absolutely shredded. This was easily the best condition on stage, no question about it. His glutes and hamstrings were amazing, his midsection was tight, and every single muscle fiber popped. We all knew he would come in condition, which is why I say it's kind of expected. That is always his calling card, of course, but this time he took it to another level. It was that next level sharpness that you do not see every day, even at the Olympia. What made it even more impressive was how smartly he posed. In previous years, his waistline sometimes made his flow look a bit bad, but this time he managed to hide that with even better angles and far better transitions. It completely changed the way his physique presented on stage, more balance, more aesthetics, and far more complete than we have ever seen him. From the back, he was insane as well, obviously. The detail in the hamstrings and glutes stood out against the very best, and I might even argue that he was the freakiest and most dominant from behind. His stage color was also on point, which only made his conditioning pop even more. Realistically, the only thing separating him from the top three was structure and pure aesthetic appeal, but in terms of presentation and execution, this was the perfect prep. Josema proved he belongs in that top 4 conversation, and might even challenge for higher if he keeps on refining. This was a breakout performance for him, despite having that top 6 last year, and I think that he looked far better. He shocked a lot of people, including myself, and now I think he could even win in the future if other people come in off. Up next on the disappointment side, we have Grego. After showing steady progress throughout the year and cracking into the top 10 at last year's Olympia, expectations were higher for Matt to keep on climbing. He had been making noticeable improvements show to show, tightening up his physique and finding a better balance between fullness and condition. But this time around, he did not really deliver the version people were hoping for. I think he will land somewhere in that third call-out range, likely around 12th to 14th, and that speaks to how flat he looked compared to the field. The legs were decent with good shape and separation, but the upper body lacked density and pop to match. From the front, his physique did not have the fullness or striking presence that really grabs your attention, and in a lineup this competitive, that makes a huge difference. Conditioning-wise, he was okay, but not really great. It was one of those looks that sits in between not being sharp enough to wow the judges, but not full enough to overpower anyone either. His structure is solid and the aesthetics are there, but he still feels caught between 2 categories. Not being big enough or dense enough to hang with the biggest guys just yet, and also not polished or detailed enough to stand out purely on shape alone. For someone who is a top 10 caliber physique last year, slipping back this far is definitely disappointing. He does have the frame to be very competitive if he can come in bigger and tighter next time, but for now, Grego did not really bring the look many of us were expecting. Back on the surprise side, we have Nile Darwin, one of the most aesthetic physiques of the entire show. Nile brought a look that turned a lot of heads this year. His waist was tiny, his lines were clean, and his overall shape was one of the most balanced and pleasing in the lineup. He really does have that classic flow the division was built around, and on stage, he really stood out when it came to proportion and presentation. There were even moments where he was directly compared to the top 4 or 5 guys, and he absolutely held his own. Conditioning-wise, he was pretty good, not quite at the extreme level of someone like Jose Manuel, but still tight and detailed enough to show clear separation. The legs could use a bit more detail and density, of course, but the structure itself carried him a long way. When someone has this kind of shape, they do not really need to be the biggest. The overall aesthetic just pulls your eye naturally. What impressed me the most, though, is how much progress he made from last year. He went from just being outside the top 10 to looking like a legitimate top 8 or higher threat. With a bit more muscle maturity and that next level condition, he could easily push into that top 5 conversation. I do not think he has quite surpassed Jose in my opinion, but with this kind of upward trajectory, it's only a matter of time. All in all, I think Nile Darwin was one of the most pleasant surprises of this year's Olympia. He had incredible flow, major improvements, and a clear sign that he is on his way up pretty fast. Now shifting back to the disappointment side, we have Brion Aninsley. It's tough to call a two-time Olympia champion a disappointment, but given his legacy and how good he actually did look, this placing definitely felt underwhelming. Brion likely will land right outside that top 10, which is a big drop for someone who wants to find what classic physique was. What makes it even more frustrating is that he actually looked really good this year. His conditioning was solid, his trademark arms were there, and he still carried that back detail and density that very few have. But in today's classic lineup, that really only gets you so far. His frame looks smaller and more compact next to the newer generation of taller, wider competitors. The division has definitely evolved into something bigger and more imposing, and that hurts Brion in direct comparison. His legs and glutes also lacked that ultra-sharp detail needed to keep up with the best-conditioned guys on stage, which further limited his impact this year. Still, you could tell that he brought a lot of effort and refinement. The presentation was pretty good, and I honestly think he was overlooked. To me, he looked even better than last year, but the reality is that the division has moved on. It is now the fuller, younger, and fresher, and more genetically gifted athletes pushing towards that higher standard. So while Brion's physique was far from a letdown in terms of quality, the result definitely was. Seeing a former champion being pushed out this far down the ranks was really disappointing, and it really shows you just how stacked and competitive classic physique is. Coming to the surprises among the first call-out, we have Terrence Ruffin. There's a real argument that this was the best version of Terrence we have ever seen. From the moment he walked out on stage, you could tell he was locked in. He had sharp lines, clean flow, and that obvious signature posing that really nobody else can match. His balance was flawless, his waist was amazing, and his overall structure screamed of classic. What really stood out this time, though, was his back. It looked noticeably improved, giving him better thickness and symmetry that helped him hold his own against much larger guys. He may still be one of the smallest ones up there, though, but the proportions and flow are so on point that it really doesn't matter. Every pose looked intentional and complete, from the front double to the side poses to the back and into that iconic vacuum, and while he did not really have one jaw-dropping standout muscle group like some others, the total package was so balanced and refined that it was impossible to ignore. If there was any question, it might be about dryness. Josema and Ramon Dino maybe came in a bit sharper from the front, but Terrence made up for it with a lot of polish and presentation. Compared to earlier shows this year where his victories felt kind of closer, this version looked a lot better. Overall, I do think Terrence Ruffin shocked a lot of people when it comes to how well he peaked. He definitely looked very confident, controlled, and easily cemented himself as a top 3 lock. This was Rough Diesel at his most refined, not the biggest per se, but possibly the most complete physique of the entire night. Closing out the disappointment side, we have Logan Franklin. Heading into the Olympia, there was a lot of talk that Logan could be a legitimate threat for the win. His recent performances had shown really good condition and great peak, clean posing, and that signature flow that does define classic. But when he stepped on stage, it was clear that this was not the version many expected. He ended up outside the key callouts, missing the top 10 even, and that's a really tough result for someone with this much hype. Logan's presentation was still pretty good though. His posing and transitions were some of the best on stage, but the physique itself did not have enough impact under the lights. He looked a bit flat, especially early on, and although he seemed to fill out slightly as the show went on, it was not enough to change the outcome. His upper body still showed good detail in the triceps, chest, and serratus, but his legs definitely hurt his balance. They were a bit straight up and down, lacking the sweep and bow and separation needed to match his upper body. Overall, his condition was decent, but the density and pop and, fullness were missing. In a lineup where everyone is bringing extreme fullness and sharp definition, at the very top at least, that makes it hard to stand out if you're lacking it. This was a physique that looked beautiful in motion and alone, but did not hit hard enough in the comparisons. Many thought Logan Franklin would be battling for a top 5 spot or even the title, but that did not materialize. He looked underwhelming compared to expectations. He was clean and very aesthetic, yes, but simply not enough to hang with the very top. For me, this was maybe one of the biggest letdowns of the entire night and of the entire Mr. Olympia, because the potential was there and we've seen it, he just did not bring it when it mattered the most. To end things off on a good note, I decided to end on two surprises. First is Ramon Dino. If we're talking about surprises at the very top, Ramon easily makes this list. He brought one of his best looks ever, big, round, and full, with major improvements to both his back and legs. His chest was fuller than before, his glutes were fully in and striated, and his waist was tight, which helped him maintain that trademark aesthetic balance, even with more mass. On paper, he is one of the favorites to win and battle for the title. What stood out the most this year was how he looked really impressive overall. The detail throughout the quads and the overall fullness of the upper body gave all the poses a lot of pop, making him look larger and more complete than last year. From the back, the improvements were very obvious. The hamstrings and lower back detail were much sharper, though the lats still looked a bit shallow in width compared to Mike. That slight weakness in width held him back from truly dominating from behind, and even in the front, his lats looked a bit underwhelming. Still, in terms of overall package and stage presence, Ramon was straight up phenomenal. The flow, the structure, and the aesthetic balance were all in check, and he looked even more confident and complete than I can remember. For me, he was one of the most impressive visually out of the top three. Even though I do not think he quite had enough to beat Mike this year, although he still could, I do think Ramon Dino delivered an amazing performance and proved that he can still improve, is still very dangerous, and is still one of the best classic physique competitors of all time. And finally, we end with Iblis, I mean Mike Somerfeld, one of the craziest stories of this Olympia, might I add. After a rough start to the season and a last-minute weight cut that brought him right to the classic limit at around 200 and something pounds, 202 I think or 3, Mike pulled off an incredible turnaround. He nailed his conditioning perfectly. The density, the detail, and the hardness were all there, and it showed from every single angle. His quad separation was insane, his lats were wide and thick, and his side chest was one of the best in the entire division. On stage, he had total control. He had confident posing, amazing transitions, and a level of composure that made every single shot hit hard. His tan did look a little bit dark on the stream in my opinion, which made some people think he was a bit softer, but in person and in clear photos, you can clearly see that he was grainy, dry, and peeled out of his mind. What makes Mike stand out is that freaky, dense look, the kind of physique that makes everyone seem small. He might not be as flowing or aesthetic as someone like Ramon, but he brings a level of muscularity and condition that is unmatched in this division. You can tell the judges were seriously considering him for the win, and for good reason. To me, this was Mike Somerfeld at his absolute best. He might not have been as big as the Arnold Classic 2025, but he was massive, rock hard in terms of condition, and very confident. Whether or not you like him as a person or you think he beat Ramon, there's no denying that this was a statement performance and one of the most impressive surprises of the entire Olympia. Anyways guys, that about does it for this video. Let me know your predictions and thoughts down below, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.